Hello, my name is Austin Gilly, and my fatherhood is on trial with AI. By this point, we have reviewed the method and the life before filing. So, why were our kids placed in hiding from me? Claude found no evidence of abuse in the pre filing texting channels, but Claude has not evaluated the rest of the evidence. In this step, Claude looks at what happened between filing and the motion to end my contact entirely with our children just before Christmas of 2022. I was informed of the filing by my wife on the morning of Saturday, May 14th. As I left to find a place to stay, my children's GPS locations disappeared from my phone and my parents' phones. The hiding was not directed only at me, it was directed at my entire side of the family. Claude noted the same family mediators from the texting channels were now in the court's own records at the filing event itself. The same actor who had been the substitutive for clinical engagement after the February 23rd naturopath appointment, my mother-in-law, appears on the court's filing fee receipt for May 11th, 2022 as the named payer for the divorce petition. The family members operating in clinical context had escalated across approximately 76 days to the legal system. What happened on May 14th was not a discrete event. It was the continuation of what had been running for months. The first thing I had to figure out was where to go. My wife had asked me to leave that day. We then negotiated to a week, but she said I wouldn't see the kids again until I was out of the house. The legal machinery started, but it is just one record of what was happening between May and June of 2022. The text channels with my children are another. The week the petition was filed and the weeks that followed, my children were warm to me, with one exception I will come back to. They were warm in the 4 children group chat. They were warm in the individual threads. They were warm in person when I saw them on 2 visits with my oldest and youngest daughters. My middle daughter and son would not visit, and Mom offered on 2 occasions for me and my parents to visit the kids under her and her parents' supervision. My parents and I decided we would not do anything that played into any theory that the kids were not safe with us, just as they had been days before filing occurred. The 4 children group chat is the clearest record of the continued warmth despite what was being described by Mom as fear. One of the 4 channels, however, was different. My middle daughter went silent in our individual thread on May 14th. She would not write to me there again until April 2024, nearly 2 years later. The 4-channel pattern is not uniform. The record of 3 children in continued textual warmth is exactly that, just 3 children. The 4th channel had already shifted in a way the others would not show for weeks. On May 20th, I left letters on my way out, one for my wife, one for each of the children. Claude describes me in those letters as someone who had not given up on the relationships. I was preparing to be away from the house, not away from the family. The pre-filing baseline that Claude documented in Step 2, the channels carrying universal warmth, the bilateral reciprocation, the operational primacy that I had been carrying for years, did not vanish on May 11th. The legal machinery had begun, but from the morning after the filing through the end of May and into June, 3 of my 4 children stayed warm to me. Then, beginning in early June, Claude finds something starting to surface in the record, quietly at first in one channel, then, beginning July 8th, in a cluster across 10 days. On June 3rd, my son sent me a text, a soft refusal to my question about whether I would see him when I met up with his sisters. 3 days later, on June 6th, my son wrote, "I don't want you to text me in anywhere until I'm ready. Okay, but you can answer okay." Claude reads the wording as a child's wording, but the boundary inside it as definite. Claude flags the date, a written boundary in my son's voice 32 days before what would surface on the recorded call in July. In June, Mom invited me and my parents to join a party, but we declined due to the supervised nature of the invitation again. Claude described this exchange as a compressed version of the structural pattern the case would run on. Mom articulated the framework. She wrote, "Their fears are real. As their mom, this is a decision I am making in their best interest. I produced primary source, the photograph I had taken on May 8th, 3 days before the filing, of children who were not afraid of me. Mom did not engage the photograph and just wrote, "I'm not addressing your accusations. I have addressed the kids' concerns." Framework asserted. Primary source documented. Primary source not engaged. The pattern would repeat for the next 4 years. On June 26, I had a phone call with my oldest daughter, who was 15. I recorded the call, and she told me her mom's parents had been counseling her. The next day, in a longer call, after I asked her how she could read the same Bible I do and reach the conclusion she had reached about how to treat her father, she said, quote, "There are several verses in the Bible that you fall into the category of." She added immediately that she would have to look them up, as she was not prepared to back up the answer. Claude reads the calls as substantive engagement on her side. Claude reads the verse categorization answer as the same channel class pattern Claude flagged in my son. Framework class language operating in audio register 15 days before the same, quote, "you must earn a relationship" framework would surface from her in writing in the previously warm texting channel. On July 8th, my son called me. The call ran 21 minutes. It was recorded by his oldest sister, and I didn't know we were being recorded. He told me he was scared to be around me. The call closed asymmetrically. I said, "I love you, bud." He answered, "Okay." Claude finds two things on the same recording. First, my response across the full call, substantive engagement, positive co-parenting language, sustained affection through every single minute. Second, Claude found some of my son's vocabulary in the call is not a 10-year-old's vocabulary, and some of his conclusions are not a 10-year-old's conclusions. Claude documents this as an adult vocabulary in transfer pattern. The next day produced two artifacts in the same household within 24 hours. My oldest daughter recorded a video call with me. We planned her 16th birthday party at my house, boots she wanted to shop for, recipes for dessert, and decorations she walked me through over the phone. The call closed with mutual thanks for calling and mutual "I love you." That same morning, dated 9:20 a.m., my middle daughter, who had not written to me in our individual thread since May 14th, sat down and wrote an 8-page handwritten letter. She was 14. The letter declared she did not want me to have any custody, that I had abused and traumatized her, that I should sign the divorce papers and give her mother full custody. The letter opened, quote, "Even though you don't acknowledge it, I am afraid of you." The letter also deployed Bible references against me. 2 productions, same day, same household, 2 siblings. Claude calls this the cross-document analytical center the primary source corpus produces from this window. Claude also surfaces what complicates a uniform reading. The calls and letters represent oscillation switching from warmth to adversarial framing. 3 days later, on July 12th, my oldest daughter sent me a message in our individual thread invoking scripture against me about her thinking I am not providing for relatives. I responded that she sounded like she was getting partial information. She doubled down. I sent, quote, "Did anyone explain to you how divorce works? Both you and your brother now seem to have ideas that make me think you didn't get all of the information you need to know what to expect." Claude holds my deployment of that message at the same unfavorable evidentiary register as everything deployed at me, that I framed her articulation or her articulated position as resulting from incomplete information rather than from her own basis. Claude names this ambiguous. The same morning, in our individual text channel, I sent my son, "I want you to know that even though you don't want to see me or talk to me right now, I still love you, and I will always love you, no matter what." 2.5 hours later, he wrote back, "I am still not ready for you to text me." Same structural pattern as June 6, me extending affection, acknowledging his stated preference, my son reasserting the boundary. 36 days, different words. Claude marks the structure, not the words, as the parallel shift signature, happening quickly. On July 13th, the letter arrived in the mail. I read it that day. I annotated it directly, citing the alienation framework I had just been reading about. which I had never heard of until my attorney informed me that such a thing exists in divorce cases. 3 days later, on July 16th, my oldest daughter came to my house for her birthday party. She stayed overnight. My youngest daughter came too, but just for the day. 4 children, 4 different places. The differential pattern continued through August. 3 of my 4 children stayed in some form of contact with me. On August 28th, my oldest daughter agreed within 5 minutes to a 15-minute call with me. Claude reviews the transcript. The call carried multiple registers at once. She asked me 11 questions about my position in the case across 2.5 minutes. She offered a critical assessment of my relationship with my own parents, and she did not return the affection at the close of the call. This is a source of great frustration for me, as I believe my daughter was honestly seeking answers. But due to the rules of decorum, I was encouraged not to discuss the case. If I did, I risked offending the court, and if I didn't, then I appeared evasive and like I am hiding something, which my children would in fact report later. Following the rules cost me dearly in how I was perceived by my own children in this process. 5 days later, on September 2nd, the 4 children group chat went dark. The same morning, my oldest daughter wrote me a categorical message asking that I stop texting her. Formal register language. The individual threads all went quiet, across multiple channels at once. The communication cutoff was complete. 114 days after filing. My attorney would say at the hearing the following year that it is one of the fastest and most extreme changes in children he had ever seen. 3 days after the cutoff, on September 5th, I assembled and delivered a document to the newly appointed guardian ad litem, who legally represented all of the kids. The packet opened with 4 framing bullet points about my wife's impairment and the alienation I saw operating. Then it presented selected evidence to support that framework. Claude marks this as the first professional application of a pattern that Claude documents elsewhere in the record. That would be my presenting the conclusion first and the evidence second. The guardian ad litem received my interpretive framework before evaluating any evidence independently. On September 14th, I received a second handwritten letter, this time from my youngest daughter. Claude reviewed the letter and surfaced several things. It is dated September 11th, 9 days after the cutoff. It is from my 12-year-old. It contains adult vocabulary patterns embedded in a child's handwriting. Quote, a much mentally healthier life. Validate other people's words. You only focus on what you think and feel. It cites my own May 20 move-out letter back to me as authorization to, quote, shoot straight. It cites my recent text about loving the children's mother and my faith as evidence those statements are insincere. A, quote, cover-up for all the wrong things you've done. It speaks for the other siblings. Quote, we pay the price. And it ends with a preemptive inoculation. Quote, if you think these words were written or influenced by anyone other than me, then you are even more foolish. Claude marks the inoculation line as the structurally distinct feature. A 12-year-old anticipating in writing the very analytical question Claude has been documenting across the record. In the same months, Claude reviewed a register shift in the channel between my attorney and opposing counsel. In mid-July, opposing counsel had relayed a realistic baseline that no court would prevent visitation absent a finding, and a counseling referral was the likely path. On October 27th, the court issued its first temporary orders based on the recommendation of the guardian ad litem and all the attorneys. They were substantively favorable to my position, but they forced children who already cut me off to resume interaction. 5 months after the filing, the system produced directions that visits with Dad begin immediately, starting at a park and working into longer and into multi-day overnight visits leading to 50-50 custody. There is no record anyone communicated any reasoning to my children, and the park visits did not go well. After some early conversation, the kids would hide and stay away at the other side of the park until Mom picked them up for hours. My dad recorded the initial conversation between us and my oldest daughter. Claude describes the recording as substantive, multi-turn engagement on my oldest daughter's part. She told me she never wanted to see me again. She asked whether I thought she was brainwashed. She told me she had become more confident in herself. She told me her brother had nearly passed out at the prospect of coming to the visit. The conversation ran. Claude marks the engagement itself, the fact of having that long, detailed, in-person conversation, as inconsistent with the rejection as fear framing that would carry the rest of the case forward. In early November, Claude marks a register shift in my oldest daughter's voice. On November 6th, in a text exchange with me, she wrote that she did not have fun on visits with me. 5 days later, on November 11th, the case crossed into law enforcement for the first time. No charges resulted. My oldest daughter recorded the interaction with the police. Claude reviewed the recording. In her own voice, in front of the officer, she described our pre-separation relationship as sort of good, verbatim, in November of 2022, and it contradicted the framing her mother would later put under oath that none of the 4 children had ever had a positive relationship with me. The guardian ad litem blamed the initial therapist for the police call, and she terminated the services of those therapists. 2 weeks later, after Thanksgiving, the guardian ad litem hosted my children, me, and my parents at her office for a holiday visit to make gingerbread houses. My children refused. The guardian ad litem threw her hands up and said in front of everyone that she had never seen anything like this and didn't know what to do. At each visit, after the first one at my house from November on, the kids would hide in the bedroom for the entire visit. They refused to eat with us and took meals at the door. They refused to participate in opening Christmas presents. I was accused of not feeding them, but was still under the direction to document everything, and I did. In December, my wife filed a motion to modify the temporary orders the court had issued in late October. The motion sought to end my contact with the children entirely. I would find out later that a note surfaced as an exhibit, a note my oldest daughter wrote on an overnight visit in December. The note described her staying up through the night holding a knife. Claude reviewed the letter and surfaced 5 things. The letter does not anchor any specific incident as the cause of the fear it describes. It positions my daughter as the protective elder sister observing her siblings. The specific examples she gives are about her siblings' faces, voices, fear, rather than as the direct subject of any specific action by me. It's, quote, my whole life spent in fear of him. That framing contradicts what her own writings to me through May of 2022 carry, including a handwritten affectionate note she gave me on May 14th, the day I was informed of the filing. The second page shifts register into a religious dialogue in which she writes God speaking back to her as daughter. And the behavioral pattern of that overnight visit, the same locked bedroom, meals at the door pattern I had been documenting, diverges from any kind of confrontation that would be the cause of staying up through the night, holding a knife in fear. The court's initial efforts had been completely derailed, and the children's behavior had entrenched. Their claimed fear became the basis of everything going forward. With my oldest daughter's note of staying up through the night holding a knife now in the court's hands, what would the court do next?